And why are we here? Well, we're kind of here because I went on a call with Kimberly from Talented People last week, and I realized that there was this whole thing happening because all these brilliant columnists and people on this call, editors of magazines like broadcast and televisual, people in the people industry, and they were like, stuff's changing, things is shifting. You know, we've got this real moment in TV where things are shifting. I thought, you know what, we need to get the band back together. We need some people that are positive and proactive, that are doing interesting things, get together again, so that we can not get too fucking depressed about the way things are going, because that's just bad shit. You know, we need to stay positive. We need to think about the people that are making things happen, and we need to get excited about the next piece. So I thought, yeah, let's jump on a call and get everybody together. So COVID was a terrible shock to the TV industry. Loads of people lost their jobs. Production stopped. It was really tough, right? Everybody here sat at home, talking into screens, feeling sorry for themselves, not knowing if the world was going to end or not. And definitely most of those businesses were on their knees for a bit. And then, but if you ran a social company, it was pretty fucking awesome, because you could kind of carry on making stuff. And then out of nowhere, all the ad rates went up and everybody was getting paid loads more money. So it was this very odd situation where one side of the video industry started doing much, much better, and another side really started struggling, and it was tough for producers. And then, of course, Web3 blew up massive during COVID, and everybody started buying cryptocurrency and launching projects, and the whole future of content looked really certain to go in that direction very quickly indeed. And then that crashed about as hard as you could crash anything without killing it, you know, and has been in pretty much life support ever since, you know. And virtual production in COVID went crazy. I didn't realize, right? But The Mandalorian was mostly filmed in a virtual studio, i.e. just one dome that was covered in LEDs on the inside, with cameras that figured out how to make that into a brilliant kind of immersive experience on TV, right? And we've got all these new headsets. Apple are doing a new headset, you know, which is going to be a mixed reality headset, which looks like it's going to potentially kickstart that. So 2023 is a big old muddle, right? Because is this year where TV production starts to ease off? Netflix have filled their cupboards back up and they're a bit skint right now. You know, are they not going to order as many shows? Are the broadcasters that are still getting punished all over the world going to carry on stopping commissioning quite so many interesting programs and just rely on their huge formats and the things they are forced to produce, you know? And will kind of VR and immersive really kick off? So I thought, I haven't got a clue. So I thought I'd get some people in that are at the coalface, that are making shit happen. While I'm out gardening, they're really doing it, right? So I'd love to introduce Derren Lawford. Derren is an amazing filmmaker, somebody I've known for a long time, brilliant executive producer. He's the CEO and founder of Dare Pictures. And prior to Dare Pictures, Derren was creative director at Woodcut Media, overseeing editorial strategy and exec producing a trio of documentaries sold to Netflix. And he was at the BBC, and he executive produced the groundbreaking multi-genre series Jail Tales, which was directed by RIP Jamal Edwards and hosted by Ashley Walters and starred Daniel Kaluuya. And at BBC Global iPlayer and London Live, he acquired unscripted and scripted shows for international and diverse audiences. And in 2022, that's when Derren decided to throw caution to the wind. I don't know who told him to do that, and founded Dare Pictures, which is a transnational TV and film company dedicated to creating impactful documentaries, drama, and film. And he was also, big up, an editorial consultant for 2022's BAFTA award-winning short, The Black Cop. Welcome, Derren. It's fantastic to have you here. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling very good after that introduction. Thank you.
I'm pleased to hear that.
You should be at all my Zooms.
Is that right? I can be your hype piece on every Zoom.
That'd be amazing.
Okay, well, I'll consider it, because quite honestly, I'm a bit quiet right now. But, we'll have to see how we go on from there. Lovely to have you here, Derren. And I'm going to now move on to my second group of very important people. So the Angell brothers. Okay, what an amazing name. I feel like calling somebody the Angell brothers is a brilliant way to kind of get them to be top of the league. It's a brilliant brand. So all of a sudden now we've got Miles and Tom here. Angell Brothers is a creative studio using audience investment and participation to develop, produce, and self-distribute original entertainment brands. What? Co-founded by the brothers Miles and Tom Angell, the business was originally conceived to write and sell TV formats to broadcasters and streamers. I'm going to let those guys explain it because I'm just going to fuck it up, right? But just so you get their background, Miles is a TV producer and developer by trade who spent his career working inside some of London's leading production companies, where he's developed unscripted formats, including The Masked Singer UK, Test Drive, Bring the Noise, and They're Off for Sports Relief, and my favorite, Sex Tape. And Tom, brother Tom Angell, has spent his career in the creative departments of advertising agencies, fashion houses, and music companies, developing content campaigns for some of the world's biggest brands. He's also the author of acclaimed book, London Tattoo Guide. Quite disappointed, Tom. Where's the fucking tattoos, man? You know, like I'm seeing this lovely, beautiful face, looks all milky white. You know, I can't see any marks on there at all.
I'm not going to take my shirt off,
Good.
but okay. I've got a bodysuit, but it's I consciously don't have any visible ones. And I like that I can have sort of two personas. I can be tattooed or not tattooed.
Okay, good to know. All right. Right. So we've got Tom and we've got Miles, and guys, which one of you explain your business to these wonderful people?
Well, Miles is on mute, so I think it's going to have to be me.
Tom, you won. You won. Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you know what? I mean, explain our business. I mean, I think part of the reason you've chosen us to come on is that we've actually gone through a very recent pivot. You know, we started Angell Brothers in 2020 out of anger, really. Like it was a burning frustration. Me personally, because I basically made a lot of stuff that people actively ignored, you know, largely making advertising and branded content. And I wanted to make stuff that, you know, had a sort of cultural impact. And then Miles was making TV and stuff that I was jealous that people actually sat down and scheduled to watch. But he was absolutely fed up with the conditions of the TV industry and like the environment to kind of produce great creative work, you know, particularly in his realm of unscripted programming and formats. It was incredibly stifling. So we were like, fuck this, we need to just take matters into our own hands. So we set Angell Brothers up as strictly as a TV format unscripted development company, not a production company. It was all about collaborating with the smartest, most appropriate producers to get us to the best version of our ideas. But fast forward 2 years, it's been an enormously challenging conditions for us as a kind of upstart and a kind of slightly new model to get those ideas sold into the major broadcasters. Yeah. So again, it seems to be a bit of a recurring theme. Out of anger, we were like, again, we just can't carry on like this. We need to we need things on our own terms. And with
pause there, because I've got to be fair. We can't have sibling rivalry. Miles, you need to carry on the story now, right?
Very good.
Okay. So this pivot happened kind of back end of last year. And to be honest, it actually happened because we went very far down the line with an entertainment show with a major UK broadcaster. And right at the last second, they said no. And I will be honest, he replied saying, do come in and we can brainstorm some more ideas. And we literally replied to him and said, thank you so much, but we're not going to pitch any new ideas ever again to a commissioner, which was very cathartic for us, but it was really meaningful as well, because we were like, we have to basically shut the door entirely. We were being teased every day that there might be an opportunity, and it never came. And it got to a point where we were like, do you know what? It actually, out of necessity, we have to change our business model and go and seek opportunities, lower hanging fruit, basically. And we'll get onto it, obviously, as this call progresses, but we've been fascinated with the emergence of Web3. We are still kind of quite bullish on NFTs. There are some really smart people doing some really interesting things. And we were like, do you know what? This is a new train about to leave the station. Let's jump on this one. So to be honest, I mean, you described our business model perfectly. I think actually, again, if we're honest, because we're at ground zero of this one, it's almost, that's actually the destination we want to get to. And we are literally in the process right now of developing a few projects that we have actually carried over from, they were once TV shows that have been flatly rejected by the entire industry, that we now want to set up as projects that kind of start as content, but end as whatever we want to grow within these brands that we build. But at the heart of it, we now want to make the audience, our shareholders, our collaborators, our supporters, as part of a community, communities within each project, but I guess also a broader community that are part of the Angell Brothers growth, and I guess plan to eventually become a fully self-publishing studio.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a brilliant idea. And having done a bit of that on social, I think it's a wonderful model. If the stars line up and the market supports you into it, it will be transformational, I'm sure. So I'm super excited by your model and kind of the bravery that you boys are showing in doing this. So thank you for explaining it. So the format of today is we're going to do a few predictions. I've got no idea what the other guys are going to predict. And I kind of want everybody else to jump in. So jump in the chat, unmute and shout, do what you want. If people are talking rubbish, let's know about it. If you really think these guys are talking sense, pile in, yeah? So Derren, thank you for your patience and for your lighting change. Looking good, bro. I just wanted to say...
I wasn't earlier, it was a horror.
It wasn't going well, like about 3 minutes.
Oh, they've just sort of disappeared into the night.
Yeah. It wasn't great. So now it's looking very good. So Derren, I need your prediction number 1, please.
Okay, so in no particular order.
Just one. We're going very gently.
Okay, intense IP wars is my prediction. I think that I don't even think it's like as a producer, like if you're running a business at the moment, and you have to sort of be in the experience business. So yes, you might be developing a documentary, but is there something in that that could also be a drama? Is there something in that that could also be a book? Is there something in that that could also be a podcast? Are there different ways in which that could be distributed? And I guess traditionally, producers have assumed that they would outsource some of that thinking and some of that agency to other people. And I think increasingly producers need to have a little bit more autonomy in that space, because that is the thing that's going to give you leverage when you're having conversations with people. If you've got something that no one else has, it doesn't matter how squeezed people's budgets are, they're more likely to want to talk to you. Right. And I've had a year, I guess, launching my company, and I was reliably informed that it was really, really hard to get into drama, particularly if you worked in docs. What I found is it's much easier to get into drama if you've got something that no one else has. And it might be a long-term plan for you to try and exploit the IP, but if you secure it early, then you put yourself in a position. And throughout the last year or so, and even more like prior to that, but I'm seeing all sorts of things go into ridiculous bidding wars. Articles, books, games, memes, it could be anything. Like if you can see the value in it, then try and see the totality of the value in it. That's what I'm saying.
Wow, okay. I was going to say gentle entry, but that was pretty bold.
That's quite gentle.
Can I? Okay, shit. I'm going to ask a very quick supplementary on that before anyone else jumps in, which is you said the word war, but it's I think there's enough IP to go around, isn't there? Can't we all just like hang out and hold hands?
We could if this wasn't business. Yeah, we could. But I'll give you like an example, right? So The Puppet Master, great documentary, right? On Netflix. There's also a film that was also on Netflix called Rogue Agent. And that was made by a completely different company. There's also an article which was called Chasing Agent Freecar, which was the original one. And I'm almost certain that the reason why it split was because there were rival bids made for the same piece of IP. What I'm also finding is that you might be developing something and someone else might be developing something in a similar space. And if you don't have the IP, then you can't protect yourself. And because there's increasingly, I guess, dramas about true stories, docs are using more narrative techniques. If those genres are blurring, then why shouldn't producers feel empowered to tell those stories in multiple genres and, I guess, future-proof themselves by securing the IP in the first place?
Wicked. I love it. Right. Anybody got questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Everybody jump in. If you think Derren's wrong, let's do it. If you think he's right, let's hear it. If you want him to help you out, just put your hand up. Okay. I'm just going to we're going to move on, and then you can just catch up in the chat, right? Okay. I don't know who out of Tom and Angel is doing the predictions, but I think we should go to Miles first. So Miles, let's have your first prediction, please.
I'm going to say first, just caveat that this prediction is potentially more 2024, but you never know. You never know. So my prediction is that an avatar / virtual human will win a major award. And by avatar, I mean not like Tom Hanks winning the award for his performance for Woody. This avatar will be given the award as themselves, as the personality, as the star. So you won't necessarily even know who the person is behind that avatar, but the avatar itself will be featured in a film. Maybe it's a singer winning a Brit Award or whatever, but we think that an avatar will win a major award.
Oh, I love that. So does that mean like I can stop being a bald middle-aged man with dodgy glasses, and I can now like be my true self as like superhero Sam and go off and like be a comedic genius and look really good looking and young and everything, and then win a BAFTA for best scripted?
That's exactly right.
Oh.
And actually that's a really important articulation of it, that the positive spin for us is that we see it as a positive form of creative expression. You know, this, I think it's not hiding away, it's actually kind of revealing much more about yourself without feeling like actually you're bearing your soul to the world. You know, I think social media has become so toxic, and actually people are terrified of saying anything, let alone the wrong thing. And I mean, you can see even just with the growth of influencers, like influencers are so prominent now, and actually we're maybe everyone else is seeing it as well, but we are already seeing virtual influencers popping up on Instagram and wherever else. Probably a label which is an offshoot of Warner Records have just announced 2 avatar singers on their roster that have been, I think it was all done through an NFT drop. So that community is kind of helping to support the growth of those 2 avatar singers. Ready Player Me, you know, a platform where you can create your avatar skin or whoever you want your identity to be. I mean, there's a lot going on, but I mean, we're actually also working on a project revolving around avatar singers, and for us, the cultural hook for our project is that no one will ever know who's behind the avatars. Because we want to protect their privacy. It's almost like offering anyone the opportunity to be the world's biggest pop star, but without the fame.
I love it. Right, I'm going to stop you there because it's a bit of a mind blower, that one. But if anybody's been reading the newsletter, I did a bit of a kind of long write on aespa, which is a Korean K-pop group who have created kind of clones of themselves in a digital environment, and it blew my mind, honestly. Like that, you can see how what you're talking about there, Miles, is absolutely gonna be the thing. It makes much more sense because the character can be better looking, funnier, more interesting, superhuman, all those things, much more interesting than actors. And really with Marvel, we've seen kind of the push towards that anyway. So Fred Casella has said something very clever in the chat, which is, will the avatar win the award for performance or for writing? ChatGPT, you know, like all of a sudden the avatar might be a bit of a scribe. And
I'll be waiting with popcorn when that moment, when the call comes, and just see the kind of heads of the Oscars or the BAFTAs, and their heads spinning, trying to work out whether or not they need to like bow to the public pressure of putting this amazing, you know, virtual character into the awards. I think it will provoke a massive ethical and cultural debate, but an important one, because I also think this is, like Miles says, an amazing antidote to one of the biggest issues of our times, which is online abuse and trolling. And it's, anyone with young kids will know what a, you know, murky place social media can be. And I think this is just one of maybe those, you know, it's one tool or weapon that we can fight back with, I think.
Yeah, interesting, Tom. And Fred's just said maybe there'll be awards for avatars as a separate thing before the mainstream's ready to take them on, which I could see happening in Web3, certainly, with that community who might be more ready to embrace that than Gladys, who's quite excited for the TV Quick Awards. You know,
that's a good idea for a production, to pitch an Avatar Awards as a show.
Right. Very good. And Derren's prediction, Jason Mitchell from Connected Set and Mashed, has said, you know, maybe in terms of Derren's prediction on IP wars, with reduced commissioning budgets out there, maybe producers will be able to control more of their IP as streamers shift away from a full buyout model, and they can't afford to pay 600 grand an episode for great factual. So a hit factual show on Netflix could support revenues as producers exploit through other media formats at the same time. And that, I think we're a decade away from that happening at scale, but because I think Netflix have got a plateau that's going to last a while. But when that starts to drop off, you can definitely see that happening. I think that's a great prediction, Jason. So Tom, before I give you my one, what's your next big prediction?
Yeah, I don't know how elegant this is, the wording, but bear with me. But we're predicting that a next major screen star, or even kind of like, you know, media mogul, is going to be discovered in a Discord, or it's even going to be a Discord community. You know, the power of their sort of collective, creative, power, but also, you know, the fact that, you know, the rule book is being torn up at the moment in terms of how we create, fund, and distribute content and premium content. There's no reason. I mean, we had this fantastic call this week with this company who'd done some research into NFTs, and to their surprise, it came out that people were more incentivized by experiential rewards as opposed to the financial incentives. I'm not so sure I believe that. But, you know, the opportunity to meet the director, to, you know, meet the cast, to be on screen, to get involved, I think those sorts of synapses that are going to start being fired between producers, creators, and their community, and the unleashing of that kind of those possibilities and creativity, I think is only going to grow. And we were even talking about, if you remember, like with the advent of apps, remember like the beer drinking one and stuff, like how I love that one. It was amazing, but like how basic that was compared to the sophistication and how seamlessly integrated these apps are into our everyday lives. I think we're on a very similar trajectory with Web3, and we're just in these very early discovery stages where lots of mistakes are being made.
Okay, sum that up for me in a sentence, Tom.
So we think the next center of power, whether it's on screen or behind, is going to be coming out of a Discord channel.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna warm our one back up again and get that going again, because I don't want to miss out. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so one of my predictions, which I've already put out there as a little trailer for this, is that influencers will become more valuable than broadcasters. And the simple way to look at that is basically Mr. Beast, because Mr. Beast is out raising money at a valuation of $1.5 billion right now for his business. And Channel 4, when Channel 4 was being sold, it was being valued at a range that included $1.5 billion. So essentially, Mr. Beast's business is worth the same amount of money as Britain's second biggest public broadcaster, you know. And that for me is really interesting, because that's a challenge because Mr. Beast is a human. Jimmy Donaldson, who's in his 20s, quite difficult to sell yourself as a ongoing entity. Channel 4 is a transferable business which can do lots of things and doesn't rely on an individual person showing up and making videos. But I think it shows just how advertising is shifting towards the easy fix of working with influencers and having influencers deal with it. We had a letter home today from our son's secondary school who basically said nobody is allowed to bring prime drink to school because it's been sold in the playground. And people are getting very upset about it. Literally, if you don't have a teenage boy in your life, bottles of prime are being sold for ridiculous amounts of money. Everybody's getting very upset about it. Why is this terrible tasting, useless sports drink that's going for £3 at Asda selling for £1,000 coming up to Christmas? It's because it's endorsed by Logan Paul and KSI, two of the biggest influencers in the world. They don't even own the company. They just get paid to promote it, but it's had a phenomenal thing. It's now the 7th biggest selling sports drink in the USA already, just from the two of them flashing it about. And so it's a real Pepsi kind of moment, which is fantastic. Ida's just said, we had a letter home from school saying we have to try and have a conversation at home about Andrew Tate, another influencer who's in prison in Romania at the moment, which was the subject of an assembly at our school as well this week, because his misogynistic kind of hate-filled approach to life is actually being supported by children in our school. Young men in our school who are 12 are going around singing his theme tune and saying that they agree with how he is. So these influencers, if people don't realize, they're not just selling sports drinks, they're influencing radical discourse at scale with tens of millions of young impressionable men. Now that is terrible, but it is also has an intrinsic financial value. Sadly, we've also seen from the terrible case in the States of the news guy, Alex, what's his name, who talked about Sandy Hook for so long and then was making millions of dollars a week from conspiracy theories surrounding the death of those children. So we know, unfortunately, that these guys can make a hell of a lot of money in bad ways, but also in good ways. Mr. Beast gave the power of sight back to 1,000 people in a video this week, you know, by funding 1,000 operations for people who couldn't see and bringing their sight back. So there's kind of a good and bad thing happening. Unfortunately, it means that influencers will have more power than carefully built organizations that have lots of checks and balances in place. And I think that's going to break through. And I think it will 10x, I think, in 5 years' time, a bit like the transfer fees in the Premiership. Mr. Beast, if he's still going, or his equivalent, will be worth 20 billion probably, rather than 1 or 2. Right, that's the first round of predictions. I think we'll probably get another 2 in if we keep it quick. Christian has just said, should creators help public broadcasters to survive, or watch them wither on the vine and follow their own path? How could we teach influencers to be better publisher broadcasters? It's a great point. Do you want to?
Okay.
They don't. Yeah. I said I don't mean how can we teach influencers. I mean how can we teach broadcasters to be better publishers? Is what I mean.
Okay. Yeah. Well, look, I think personally, I feel like I've tried to teach the broadcasters to be better publishers for a long time now. They've even paid me to help them teach them to be better publishers, and I haven't had a great deal of success as yet. And so my view is that most leaders of public broadcasters are interested in the status quo rather than bold innovation, and they're not really paid to innovate. They're paid to stabilize and to keep things ticking along as they have been. So I think personally, I think it's unlikely we can educate them easily. I do think that we need to legislate. Ofcom's quite powerful in this country, but it seems to completely ignore online kind of antics. And I think if anybody's watched the Sideman's kind of SVOD, which is called Side Plus, they wouldn't let their sons watch it because it's pretty it's pretty ropey, I have to say. And even for a really good, well-run business, they deliberately fly close to the sun in terms of taste and decency to get those teenage boys in and to make them pay their £7 a month. So I do think I think we should legislate, because legislation is entirely effective if it's applied properly. And I think it's time for those guys to step up and make sure that people on YouTube are held to the same standards as people broadcasting on television. I think that would sort things out pretty quickly, personally. Anyway, I'm going to come back. Thank you, Krishnan, for that. And I'm going to go back to Derren. Derren, what have we got for round two?
I've got two. Well, I was going to go with one thing, but I'm going to go with the second thing because then it changes the conversation slightly.
Okay.
I guess what I'm thinking about is generative AI and how it presents us with an ethical dilemma, but also a curatorial opportunity. So by that I mean, if you now have AI programs that can literally generate content, whether that is an image, whether that is words on a page, whether that is arguments as to how you could do things, whether that's what it is that you cut and how you cut things, then that's helpful. It could expedite certain processes. But like with anything in the world of tech, like the tech doesn't have a sense of right and wrong. It's informed by the people that are programming it. It's informed by the people that are overseeing it. And I often think that with things like Facebook, Instagram, they weren't designed with necessarily an editorial philosophy in mind or with a moral compass in mind. And I think one of the big challenges around generative AI is how you make it ethically viable. But at the same time, I do think there's an opportunity for people to be able to curate experiences and curate the technology and input on the technology. And there's a real-time example. There's two things, I guess, that spring to mind with that. So one is like, in a very, very short space of time, people got very worried and excited at the same time about ChatGPT, right? So on the one hand, they're saying, well, how are we going to know whether kids are cheating or not? Rather than maybe if kids are learning certain information by rote, it's helpful if that information is automated and there might be something else that they can learn that's a little bit more experiential, right?
Interesting.
Or you know, if ChatGPT effectively helps you do research for a treatment really quickly, then maybe the money that you were never getting paid to do development by the commissioner anyway is being saved. That's a potential upside, right? And you know, there's a book by a guy called Tom Goodwin called Digital Darwinism, and he talks about disruption and self-disruption. And he's like, whenever you're worried about something that you think could like be an existential threat to your business, then try and focus a portion of your business on that, and actually see what that looks like and feels like. And there's a real time example that I'm aware of. So I've got some friends who, one of them is a really accomplished voiceover artist, and he's got a partner who's a voice producer. And AI is absolutely disrupting the audio world already in a really, really meaningful way. And he's really torn because he's a really experienced voice producer and VO artist. And he knows there's a finite amount of voices that will be able to survive in the future. But all of these programs need someone who is experienced in that space to help them work out how to do things properly. So he's actually set up a new company called Directors, and the I is AI, and it's designed to work with tech companies and companies in general to help provide solutions to this space, to help provide expertise, so that there is like an editorial standard, that there is a way of doing things. And so, yeah, I do think that generative AI is exciting. I do think it is ethically fraught, but I also think it's an opportunity for us to be really creative and responsibly creative about how we do things in the future.
Do you know what's interesting, Derren, is I had that down in my predictions that it will become kind of a very well-used tool by the end of 2023 in professional content production. I just wouldn't see why you wouldn't do it. Basically, it's making people's tasks quicker and easier. And actually, not just ChatGPT, which is a text-based, which you say, write me a script in which, this person has a fall down the stairs and this person responds, is actually a Midjourney, another visual text to image generators. Because I was speaking with a producer the other day who said, I was struggling with a poster for my new Netflix show, and I just basically spent the afternoon on ChatGPT, I think one of the image-based ones, and I created an image that then was the image for the poster of my new Netflix show. I spoke to a commissioner who said that they were using it to create set design. So they had a new game show, and they actually basically used generative AI to sketch out 100 different ones. When I was doing the logo for the Big Swing podcast, I just went on to generative AI. I did a test, right? I went on to generative AI and I popped up a load of ideas about how, a load of suggestions about how things might work and the show. And all of a sudden, I had 20 great designs that I could use, right? But the problem was that I then went on to 99 designs and got humans to do it instead, and paid a few £100 for a few humans to come up with the range of designs from the same briefs. And although the AI ones were more fractured, they definitely were more helpful than the human ones, which was kind of depressing, right? Because the human ones dropped to tropes. They were really simplistic. They were people trying to make the finish good, not the idea good. And ChatGPT was much more industrial, much more breaking eggs. And it was really depressing. And so, because they did a better job for me, as an AI, and that takes great computing power. And we forget how much processing power and how many billions of dollars are in these machines. Is a reason you send that prompt and it takes a while to come back. That's because there's processors burning all around the world trying to solve that problem for you. And we forget about the impact of that. But I do feel like you're right. I think, let's have, maybe that's a shared prediction that AI is going to become a core tool in what we do. Was that fair, Derren?
Yeah, no, that is fair. I mean, look, the reason when it really spun me was about 4 months ago, and I was with someone who showed me this thing on Discord, and he said, look, Derren, just give me a few keywords or something. So I gave him keywords, and he didn't know anything about what I was telling him about. And it was keywords for an idea that we are actively developing. But it's a mysterious person, and there aren't really very many pictures of this person. So I thought, let me just give them some keywords. And they put the keywords in, and about 2 minutes later, he produced an image that was exactly right for the title of the show that I was about.
There you go. I mean, it's really fascinating, isn't it? And Joe Farron, hey Joe, nice to have you on the call. He's put Luma Labs in the chat, a link to Luma Labs, which he says is his favorite. He's been playing around with it because you can create sequences with the look and feel of a gimbal or a dolly or a drone with just a single video, which is fascinating. Derren's just revealed that he's actually an AI. He's not a human. So
I did warn you.
Pretty awesome. Well done, Derren. I think I can't claim to have an artificial Derren, but I think we need to chip in and get him a new video card. So that's really helpful. Thank you, Derren. Right.
And Sam, I've just put a link to Nick Cave's newsletter, because just to provide some balance, because I agree with a lot of what you've said and the power of these tools that AI provides, but it's a brilliantly seething critique of AI and how it will always fall short of like human intuition and creativity and soul. So if anyone wants a good read, it's one of the best newsletters on the internet anyway, but it's a brilliant article.
I love that. I'm all for slagging off the robots until they've got guns. Until they've got guns, because when they've got guns, I'm going to be fucking polite to them all the time, right? But until they have like weaponry and can send people around my house to argue with me, I'm going to be rude about robots anyway. So right, who's next? Miles, I think you're next up, mate.
Well, this is our last one, so it's a shared one actually, which maybe helps for timings. But sport will conquer the metaverse first/best.
Okay.
So Well, I noticed Joe Farron's on the call, and we've spoken at length about sport in the metaverse over the last year. And it is something that's very close to us. Again, we've got a project. It's our oldest idea that's still in development and was once a talent show and is now hopefully threatens to be a brand new sport that we're launching, which hopefully everyone will see come the end of the year, maybe next year, actually, if we're being realistic. But sport just has all the ingredients. I think sport has all the ingredients that you want in great IP anyway. Fandom, drama, action. And I think actually in order to kind of onboard as many people as possible into the metaverse, and again, we're optimistic about what it can do. We think that they are ultimately best placed to actually bridge people, provide that bridge and actually kind of make it an experience worthwhile. I mean, obviously it's going to take time for it to be, unbelievable, and maybe one day we'll get to Space Jam levels of interaction and experience, but for now we still think that they're going to be creating the best activations and experiences for people.
And what's exciting is like what new sports, when you smash these kind of technologies together with creativity, what new sports might emerge. I mean, we've all seen the rise of esports. And in fact, we were also reflecting, did you see the Gods of Snooker documentary series? All about like the heyday of snooker in the 80s and 90s. And we're just thinking like, what's going to be that fringe sport or new sport that's going to bubble up from the margins, that's going to really matter and capture the imaginations of these young, the next generation of young viewers. And to us, that seems really exciting because as well, the metaverse, it's like a lot of Web3 technologies, it's had its challenges, but a lot of VC money has been pumped into metaverses, and they want to see, they're going to want to see a return. They're going to want to see engagement. And we'd put our money on some kind of sports entertainment or sporting experience.
There are also, and actually another important point is environmental. If you think about actually how bad Formula One, for example, is for the planet, I think actually if you don't need to move your humans all over the world all year round, again, there could be a positive environmental impact on that. So there are of course good and bad reasons for it, but we see the positives more.
And on that basis, do you feel like that when you're thinking about the next kind of take, is it more about 3D immersive entertainment, or is it more about kind of fan interaction via tokens? How do you see that kind of, I know it's a general thought and a kind of a genre identification as a potential kind of breakthrough moment, but do you know what shape that might take?
Well, in fact, it's a good point. And our sports project started, we wanted it to be a talent show on TV, and Tom and I are Chelsea fans, so we're gutted to see Jorginho go to Arsenal. Sorry, no more football chat. But we were sat at Chelsea and we said, how do we get audiences to love a talent show as much as we love Chelsea? That was basically how it all started. And we were like, we don't stop treating them as these like passive people that just sit there and consume your content on the sofa. Like, treat them as fans. And that was, so we've been quite happy, and we feel quite vindicated that suddenly fandom has kind of exploded in the last year, because we were like, I think we're actually onto something, which encouraged us to expand this project into something entirely different. But I think it's fan ownership. It's putting your audience at the heart of what you're doing. And again, sport will lead the way, but I think it will trickle down and seep into every type of IP and content across all industries. And I think especially in TV and social media, I think it's just, for us, it's definitely treating people as fans.
Interesting. And so it's that direct relationship between the experience and the fans, which feels like it's going to be that first electric connection. And look, I agree new sports or different forms of sports. If you'd said 20 years ago that we'd take a 5-day cricket match and turn it into 2 hours, and that would create, you know, multiple billions worth of economic value in India and in the world, I think a lot of people just wouldn't have agreed with that. And now all of a sudden we've got the IPL, which is literally one of the highest value sports. By disrupting it and by trying something different, by offering people something that they didn't know they even needed. So I completely agree with that. And it's interesting that Manchester City, being the highest earning football club in the world this year, have put quite a lot into metaverse projects. I see Joe Farron put a post on LinkedIn the other day that went mental about their work in the metaverse and trying to create kind of immersive experiences, giving the fans that can't turn up in Manchester to watch a game a whole nother level of opportunity to interact. And I think when the world's going to shit, people want, in real life, people love escapism, right? You know, when you look at Japanese television, and Japan's been through some heavy years over the last couple of decades with tsunamis and nuclear problems and like significant, you know, trauma. Japanese television is on one end, very solemn, very classy and very factual, especially factual. And on the other end, it's absolutely batshit crazy, you know. And so I think that there's a trend towards that as well, which is going to, I think, coming into the UK a lot more, which is news is going to be either deep investigative journalism about why our politicians are so corrupt, or it's going to be absolute fluffy nonsense that helps us forget that there's a lot of people in the country who can't afford to put their heating on. So it's an interesting thing, and sport feels like the way that we're all kind of medicating at the moment culturally to make sure that we kind of have some relief from the pressure of day-to-day life. So it would make sense that that's the easiest gateway drug into the new paradigm, I think. Brilliant.
Have you seen PK's new football league as well?
Yes, I did pop that in my newsletter, I have to say, Tom, because it is fascinating. So Gerard Piqué and a load of his friends, now he's unfortunately split up with his missus. He's got time to for business ventures, and all of a sudden he's started a kind of a T20 version of what, in all sense of purposes, is posh five-a-side football. You know, but is quite clever, and let's see is my verdict on that one. There's been lots of versions of six-a-side on Sky and things like that that haven't quite caught fire, but you know, let's see if the Saudis put tons of money behind it for a long period of time. I think it could work, but I think virtual horse racing has been making millions and billions for many years in betting shops with betting addicts. So there's no reason why that shouldn't go forward. And Joe Farron has just raised one in the chat about, you know, golf and how very rich golfers are thinking about investing in this space, which makes a lot of sense as well. Wow, sport, right, there we go. That sounds very exciting. Okay, I'm going to pop another one in here before we go back to Derren. Thank you, guys. Those are brilliant predictions. My thought, which is maybe a little bit more on the nose, but I think it's going to become more and more interesting, is social media has had a complete pivot over the last year. It's gone from making a lot of producers a lot of money by putting up original content to essentially not making them any money at all anymore. That was due to one big change. That change was that Apple decided to ask people when they downloaded an app whether they wanted to be tracked by that app or not, which felt like a very minor thing when I re-downloaded Facebook at one stage. But actually means that Facebook can't really sell valuable advertising against content anymore, because they can't sell an Arsenal fan who lives in the British countryside, who's interested in politics and who likes to buy various foods at the delicatessen. They can only sell a person in England, which means they can't target ad sales, which means they can only sell ads at a much lower rate than they would have been able to before, which has crashed the amount of money that producers are getting for making content online. But what that does is that enables publishers to realize that social is just an incredible marketing device for brands and influencers and everything else, and that most people that have done really well in social over the last 10 years plus have used their popularity on social, or their brand's popularity on social, to sell some other shit, right? So what's really interesting about that is I think social media is now going to become the absolute battleground for television, because essentially the only way you're going to get people to really care about new releases on Netflix or on BBC iPlayer or on ITVX is to win the war on social and to actually get awareness on social media of these shows that are popping out. I think over the next few years, we're going to see more and more marketing budget in original content go into clever shows that tee up the events of these big box sets dropping. And there's a few production companies in the UK like Wall of Entertainment and other people who are now making companion shows for the Netflix shows or for the Amazon Prime shows to make sure people are aware that they're going to drop. And it's a brilliant form of content marketing that's usually based around a certain community or a certain audience that they really want to target. And what we're seeing is TV having to fight for funnel, fight to find those big audiences and then tempt them into coming to see their show, and that's not going to work by just putting a few radio ads out anymore, because really social has become the town square. And I think that social media will be regenerated as a place where we promote the hell out of stuff and try and bring audiences together and then take it to other places. And so I really think that a lot of producers who've built huge audiences on social that are now losing money by try to fill them with new content every day, and now going to pivot their business model slightly to marketing and awareness for other folks. And I think that will save a lot of social publishers if they pivot hard enough and quick enough into a new business model. So that is my next.
It'd be a great, I say that, I mean, I think that would be a great discipline for producers to be thinking in those terms, because obviously my background is, branded content, brand building. Miles used to share horror stories, as I'm sure a lot of people on this call would have had, where he'd be on a shoot, they've been developing, pre-producing a show for months. They're on the shoot and they're like, oh, fuck, is anyone going to do some tweets? Quickly get the runner, we should do a few tweets about this show. Now, obviously, I know people are generally getting better, but I just wonder if producers are thinking about that, thinking, a multi-channel approach. It might also become a virtuous circle where it improves your quality of content creation, in terms of your kind of mainline hero content as well. Because I think if you're thinking about behaviors and insights and, the kind of internet culture and how people are behaving in those channels, I think that will only strengthen your hand and improve your content up top as well. And it should all feed one another. That was going to be actually one of my other predictions, is that maybe, I don't know if this is that controversial, but, TV indies just might die. I think those who only make TV programs probably won't sustain much longer. I think you have to learn how to play in these different channels as well.
Tom and I have said we're not short of ideas. And actually, when we come to hire people, we're basically going to be hiring a marketing team, social team. We don't need developers. We don't need TV people. We need people to sell our ideas on social media. That's who we need. And I think, it's difficult for some people to hear this, but I think that actually, again, like Tom said, TV production companies should probably have to think about hiring social media people instead of a team of developers or whatever else. Like, get one developer, then one social media person, and whatever else. I think in that sense, we've got to always be thinking about how we can promote and sell our ideas.
Well, we all know that on-screen talent, you've definitely got a better chance of winning a gig if you've got a big social. The amazing Kate Quilton's on our call, and she's got a fantastic Instagram. Hey, Kate, and works really hard on content and tries it really brilliantly.
I haven't got. No, I mean, I kind of haven't really ventured into social, and that's what you're up against, really. You're up against people that have got followers, kind of numbering 1 million, etc. That will win the commission.
Yeah, it's tough, right? And you've built a personal brand in lots of different ways, but you have, I think it's fairly authentic what you do, which is good, but I think you take on causes and you go for things that, build people's awareness of you and what you're doing and what you care about, but I feel like it's really interesting, isn't it? How there's probably an expectation if you're on Stream Talent now that your part of your day job is those 3 posts a day. Do you think that's where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that I checked out some time ago. And yeah, I would say that kind of, you know, I mean, things have totally changed. I mean, for instance, someone told me the other day that Spotify, Audible, they will only look at talent to host a podcast if they've got 500,000 followers plus.
Wow. That's a benchmark.
So that's it. It's like they won't even engage with you unless you've got that. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
And so Rachel Boyd, another legend who's on our call, has put a brilliant link in on Netflix's strategy for Wednesday. I don't know who's seen Wednesday. Most of the young people in my house definitely have seen all of it. But, you know, she's talked about, she's dug out how they've got a Twitter account just for the show of 220,000 people. And it's hard to build on Twitter right now, you know, so that's pretty amazing that the Netflix team are thinking about that months in advance. They're really creating a long run up to that event of a show drop now, which I think is fascinating, that they really are thinking about the marketing right at the beginning, you know. And Joe Farron's just said, do you need to have a huge marketing budget if you've got 10,000 incentivized NFT stakeholders who will promote the content for you, i.e. people that own a sliver of the show, you know? And I do think that that's really interesting, because from my point of view, when that happens, it's a game changer. I think it won't happen overnight. I think it will happen in very small niches and then move across. You know, it might be lacrosse that becomes live lacrosse matches that become that first sport, or something like that is the breakthrough. I don't think it'll be Premier League, because there's too many big checks already been written in that space to disrupt it very easily. But it does feel like owning the content is going to be, when the Financial Services Authority and others allow that to happen in a simple way, is going to be really fascinating. So I'd encourage everybody to read that Netflix piece. Derren, have you got any more predictions before we wrap the predictions up?
Yeah, and just to build on what's been said, I completely agree with what Tom and Miles are saying, particularly around content marketing, and around a production company like just doing production, I think is risky, right? And that's also, I guess, that what relates to my original point about IP, is that if you have the IP, then you've got different routes to market, you've got different manifestations of how that could exist. And so you can just hedge a little bit as well. But like, there's a project I'm doing at the moment where it is currently a podcast, a book, and a drama, and I have all the IP for that. But what I've also done is I'm effectively co-producing the podcast, and I'm co-producing the podcast with a content marketing company called Creatorville. We've co-hosted the podcast, but he's also come up with a very detailed content marketing strategy for every moment between the podcast being released, a book being released, and how it is we might raise awareness about any forthcoming opportunities that we've got. And one of the things I think, it's not that I think it's odd, I just think it's curious to me, which is that broadcasters don't siphon off, even just as an experiment, 10 to 15% of their annual marketing budget and focus it on content marketing in a completely different way. And in a similar way, I've never really understood why we as producers rely on other people to promote our shows when we know our shows better than anyone else. And so to that point about production companies probably needing to hire people in the content marketing space, I think it will become increasingly important, because audiences are into franchises, they're into brands, right? They're not necessarily into channels. And some of those brands are moving from channel to channel anyway. So if you've got the expertise to elevate that yourself, then you're going to give yourself competitive advantage. And I guess that sort of, segues into my last prediction, which I guess feels like it's just an escalation of where we're currently at, which is that I just think that everyone is stealing each other's clothes. And everyone is stealing each other's clothes because we're all trying to get closer and closer to the audience who likes to be in lots of different places. So by that I mean, so you said that influencers are like the new commissioners, which I sort of agree with, and in many ways I might characterize them as publishers / broadcasters. But then you've got a brand like Foot Asylum, which is basically a publisher, but also a creator of formats. But like, if you're asking me who I think wears the most ingenious source of you skewing factual entertainment formats and promoting them, bar none, right now, you ask me, it's Foot Asylum.
Well, I tell you what, I think that the two production companies that provide them with all those shows would probably put their hands up and say Foot Asylum is the cleverest people who paid those guys to come up with the formats and have managed to leverage them, you know. But isn't that fascinating, Derren, that you're saying a footwear brand, which is not even a big footwear brand. Do you know what I mean? Like, is essentially probably more famous with young people for brilliant fact-end than it actually is for its trainers. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. But what's even more interesting is that they exist online. Like, these formats exist online. Obviously, the shoe company exists in the real world, but they also use really traditional advertising as well. So Foot Asylum are all over buses, which is one of the most powerful ways of advertising. If you look on the buses and you see Foot Asylum, you won't see a trainer. You won't even see a sports star. You just see a row of influencers. And this is what I mean, is that people are stealing other people's clothes. I'm talking about producers effectively trying to become broadcasters as well. And I'm looking at broadcasters and they're thinking, do we need to become producers? I mean, you're looking at streamers and they're thinking, do we need to become traditional TV people? Like, everyone's trying to take a bit of each other's part of the pie because they're chasing the audience wherever they are. And I don't think that's going to stop. And I think it's probably because no one has the exact answer as to how we're all going to make money in the future. So we're all trying slightly different things at the same time. Okay.
So the industry is eating itself. I'm going to write that down as, because that's what it feels like. Feels like where we're going, doesn't it? That's so fascinating. Thank you, Derren. I would say on the back of that it's also happening between producers. My favorite one recently is Mr. Beast deciding to do a real life Squid Game on his channel, paying $4.2 million of his own money to make a half-hour spectacular. And getting hundreds of millions of views on YouTube as a result. But then, brilliantly, not pitching it back to Netflix as a show and waiting for The Garden and Stephen Lambert's company to pitch it to Netflix as a show, the real life Squid Game, and they win the commission. So you know, my man has spent $4.2 million. He's probably earned, you know, a few $100,000 back in advertising off the back of that. Obviously, it's boosted his channel over, you know, it's a good outcome for him. But really, Netflix didn't sue Mr. Beast for ripping off their show, because it was a huge publicity coup for them that he would do that. But then The Garden and Stephen Lambert decided just to copy the idea and pitch it back to Netflix. And now they get, between them actually, the kind of mega deals, bucks thing of turning it into, whilst the writer of Squid Game just gets a season 2 of his scripted show, you know, so like, it's absolutely nuts. Copyright's going out the window, you know, kind of the rules of engagement are just gone, really. I did a piece about how everyone's just ripping off all the TV formats. All the influencers are basically copying Big Brother and Top Gear and everything, and they don't give a monkeys. You know, it's literally just crack on. What do I enjoy? What stuff that can we just copy the format of, and let's just get on and do it. And so it just feels to me like we're at an absolute kind of rolling plateau of everybody just trying not to fall off the edge of the cliff, you know, and that is dangerous. And it is where disruption lives. You know, that is where somebody else comes up with something new and just says, hey, I'm going to quietly get on with this in the background. And when everybody starts just trampling bodies, trying to stay on top of the cliff, we just do something fresh. And so it does feel like a very disruptable moment, you know, right now, I believe, in the industry. And so, you know, my ad hoc prediction is some things are going to get built this year that over the next 5 to 10 years become incredibly important. You know, we probably won't notice them this year, but this is the time where there will be great talent knocking about. All the tech companies have sacked a lot of their great talent. A lot of creatives have all of a sudden not got jobs anymore. There's going to be some amazing things built this year. Unfortunately, that's a very easy prediction because no one can prove it untrue, because I'm saying that we won't get the result of it for some time. But you know, I think it's really interesting. So look, are there any predictions from our people on the call that they'd like to share? I'm kind of thinking there's a lot of good looking people on here. They've probably got a couple of things in their back pocket. So if anybody wants to spin anything up, jump in. Joe, I'm sure you got about 8. Mr. Farron Jr.
I think quite a lot of mine. I think, yeah, I echo what you guys said about sport. I think, you know, in just terms of evidence in Web3, like you've seen the most activations out of anything, up 250 basically since 2019 activations in sport, whether that's like across the likes of So Rare, who are doing digital collectibles, or various other people. So sport is like categorically leading the way in terms of Web3 activations, and I think that's only accelerating this year. Like I went to Sports Pro, which is the equivalent of like broadcasting sport, one of the biggest B2B markets, and I went in just after the FTX scandal and went in thinking, oh god, I'm gonna have to have some big excuse around why crypto isn't a scam here, and then literally that wasn't the case at all. Like everyone, all the major rights holders are, if they're not kind of talking about it or planning to test and learn exercises. So yeah, I think bang on with the sports prediction.
Okay, interesting. That is fascinating, isn't it? And I feel like it's going to be quite tough to call which of those opportunities are going to be the ones that win, because we need probably the wind to change a little bit to offer that opportunity at scale, and we need a few projects to win big, don't we, to prove it's possible, I would say.
Well, I think the so rare the people who basically do digital collectibles for digital trading cards in football, they just won the Premier League contract. So I think the big inflection point is going to be how like a sort of NFT tokenized fantasy league sits against a non-incentivized fantasy league, and then how, you know, what will win out, will people actually want to be, you know, be able to make money from playing fantasy. So that's going to be I think a really big tipping point probably.
Well, that does sound like a massive advantage, because there's a lot of people on Twitter who decide that they know what they're talking about when it comes to football management, who would never have the chance to actually do any of it. So the idea that you could actually earn money from that as a play to play is highly interesting, especially with the Premier League logo on it, because you could set up as many online play to earn games as you like around soccer, but if you've got the endorsement, that is really what makes all the difference from a fan perspective, I'd suggest. So that would be fascinating. Oh, Christian's just said governments are going to shut down public broadcasters as fast as they can. Oh, that's depressing. Israel has started the game. We're only talking about entertainment on this call, but news, information, debate, and ideas are at the heart of public service media, and it's under threat, if not terminally fucked. I would agree with that, Christian. I think in France, one of the big public networks has been sold off already as well. You know, we are seeing it everywhere. I've been a big advocate of a public service content fund rather than a public service broadcasters, because I think the broadcasters might be terminally ill, you know, and I think at that point, because the route of distribution has been smashed to bits now, and there are so many ways to reach everybody, I think what we have to do is make shows that are public service shows, and then figure out how to distribute them afterwards. Because as long as those shows are getting prominence on YouTube, or prominence on TikTok, or prominence in the cinema, or prominence on your phone, then they'll reach people, and they'll reach people actually probably a lot better than they will by just being shoved out at, you know, 11 o'clock on BBC Two. So I really think that it's a shame. My early efforts are failing massively, but I think if we could get, you know, put a 1% tax on the profits of internet giants on their advertising, and then use that money to come up with a few $100 million a year to commission people who actually can make shows that young and middle-aged people will watch, and then put them in front of them by making the platforms give them prominence, I think we solved that problem, Christian. I don't know if anybody else knows about any schemes that where people are actually trying to disrupt public service.
It's not a massive disruption, but they're trying to do something. I think Christian will know about this as well. There's this thing called the Big Five. So there's a European collective of broadcasters that are pooling their resources, and they're public service broadcasters. They're pooling their resources to help fund really big, ambitious shows, whether that's at a development stage or a commissioning stage, to try and compete with the commercial sector, but still do things that are of quality and have a place in the marketplace.
Interesting.
And I know that there is some talk about like international film funds thinking about working more strategically together. So it's thinking, okay, well, if you apply to us, then let's see how we can maybe help you with a fund in Canada. Let's see how we can maybe help you with a fund in Germany, and actually help make your project get to market quicker. And you could see a world where if you had the film funds working strategically together and public service broadcasters working strategically together, they could solve each other's problem. If they were so minded to.
Fascinating. Well, let's hope so, because I think otherwise we're just going to end up with some amazing big scripted dramas and a load of reality shows, and it's going to be a real struggle to find high quality news and information, which I think is, you know, this week the BBC shut down BBC Arabic, which has been going for over 50 years and was massively important for hundreds of millions of people. And I don't think anybody even noticed, you know, like in the UK. And it's a real deeply worrying situation, I think. And I think if our politics wasn't so smashed to bits by more urgent and scary things in the UK, we'd be all over it, if I'm honest. I just think the fact that people can't get an ambulance means not many other things are front of mind at the moment, sadly. Okay, so Ammos just said, Derren, to your point, do you know if that's focused on non-scripted, the Big Five, or is it across the board, do you know?
I think it's non-scripted, but there was, I don't know whether it still exists, but there was a drama version of that. I don't know whether it's still going, but it was around the time of DRG NENT time. There was a European alliance of broadcasters who were coming together to sort of co-fund big budget dramas.
Right, okay.
But I don't know whether that's still going.
Interesting, okay. Well, look, I think that's been fascinating to hear everyone's predictions. You know, I love the idea that an Avatar is going to win an Oscar, you know, and that we're going to have these crazy IP wars. You know, what have I got down here? Discord is going to be the next big center of power. And I am going to re-up the Creatorville Discord and send it out so that we can all natter on there again. And, you know, influencers being worth more than channels in a good and bad way, sadly, it seems, to Ida's point. And what else have we got here? AI is going to become really useful. So I'm like in the countryside, and I always think about tractors, right? Because back in the 40s, after the Second World War, the farmers were all made to go and industrialize all their farms so we wouldn't starve. And essentially tractors came out. And I bet there was loads of tractors, loads of farmers, because I know a lot of farmers and I know the way they think now, who were just saying, what fresh hell is this? This machine, it's going to cost a fortune. It's going to be really difficult on a hill. It's going to fall over and hurt people. Why would I want that? I've got these wonderful 8 horses, you know, that cost me nothing because they eat the grass, you know, like they're really helpful around the place. You know, I can ride them down to the pub. They know the way home at the end of the pub. You know, there's loads of great reasons to have horses. But like, I think AI is a little bit like that, maybe, you know, which is, it might be something that if everybody else is using it to the points that were raised here, everybody's just going to have to get on board. You wouldn't want to live without Google, right? But 20 years ago, a lot of people did want to live without Google. Not many people do anymore, you know. So I do personally think that that's definitely the 2023 given, if I'm honest, you know. And hopefully the industry doesn't eat itself too quickly. And if it does, there's loads of chili sauce and, you know, nice stuff on the way. I personally think the industry eating itself might be helpful if it brings up ways that we can actually figure itself out. And Christian's got a good point, which is AI will definitely know your way home from the pub. you know, so you don't need a horse anymore. So look, I want to say a massive thank you to the amazing men, and I'm sorry they were only men on the panel this time around. They were very clever men, and they had some very great ideas. So I'm very pleased that they spent some time with us tonight. And thank you so much to Derren Lawford, the CEO and founder of Dare Pictures, who's got some amazing projects underway that I'm very excited about, and to Tom and Miles Angell from the Angell brothers, whose kind of innovative spirit keeps me happy and warm and makes me feel pleased that there are people out there that are doing clever things that are going to cut through and do well, you know. And finally, I just want to say thank you to everybody else, including all these brilliant people on my screen in front of me, for showing up and for getting involved. And it makes all the effort of putting these things together worthwhile when good people like you spend a little bit of time with us.